And joining us now to talk more about the GOP's political strategy is Dr. Wendy Patrick, a political and legal analyst. Wendy, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
The former president is taking steps to hold on to the Republican Party, as evidenced by his statement yesterday. The top House Republican, Kevin McCarthy, has flown to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump. Is the Republican Party now the party of Trump, or do you expect a party to split?
Well, I'll tell you what, it may be Valentine's Day, but there is no love lost within the Republican Party. There has been a split, an increasing rift over the course of the last year between the two impeachment trials. Think of how differently Republican support looked back when we first had an impeachment trial for the now ex-president. But also consider that there are many Republicans that don't think that this second trial was fair. And think about this, okay? I'm a 25-year trial attorney. This was so different than anything you would ever see in a courtroom. You had a trial occur at the crime scene with the victims and witnesses serving as both judge and jury. Even then, it didn't result in a conviction. But not so much on judgment, but on jurisdiction, as you heard from Mitch McConnell afterwards. That alone demonstrates in grand fashion over the weekend how big of a rift there is within the Republican Party. But it's also true that they still have common ground and common ideals. So the challenge moving forward is going to be around what and who they can coalesce so to move forward and hope to have some luck, not just in 2024, but in 2022.
All right, so we heard from Lindsey Graham saying the party needs to rally behind Trump and focus on his accomplishments in his 4 years in office as president of the United States. From what you just said, I'm curious, is the party capable of unifying around Trump?
Well, they're capable of unifying, but the question is whether it would be around the ex-president, because now Citizen Trump is going to join some of his predecessors in really demonstrating how he is going to remain involved with the party. Remember that ex-presidents have a very special spot, usually, within their own party in terms of what kind of influence they have, not only on down-ballot elections, but on policy and procedures and all the kinds of things that traditionally have held sway with a different party. But we are at an entirely different season with President Trump, and it remains to be seen what type of a voice, especially now that he doesn't have a Twitter account, what kind of a voice is he going to have? It's really up to him to some extent as to the steps he can take to show that his ideas remain great Republican ideas moving forward.
I want to talk about that voice for a moment because you mentioned something very interesting. The Twitter accounts for the former president have been taken away. What is going to be that method of delivery for Trump?
Well, he's going to have to find a way. Obviously, he's no stranger to the cameras, and he's no stranger being on center stage. I feel bad for President Biden having been totally overshadowed by his predecessor up until now. But that's going to be a very important question, is how will he garner that kind of support? Now, he seems to be lying low and letting things pass, which is probably a good idea. But then when he reemerges, will it be through his kids? Will it be through some of his supporters? Will it be through people like Lindsey Graham? We know it certainly won't be through Mitch McConnell and some of his old methods of support, because they've pretty much jumped ship, at least for now. So that remains to be seen. The statement that you mentioned that he brought out, that was a brilliant way of having a very sort of steady tone, a very measured approach. He was very much on script. It might be that way, at least for the immediate future, until we actually see him holding rallies. I don't anticipate we're going to see that anytime soon.
All right, Wendy, after the events of January 6th, a lot of talk from Republicans saying that Trump was responsible for the riots at the Capitol, yet only 7 voted in favor of impeaching him, convicting him. One of them being Senator Bill Cassidy, who said today that he believes the president should be held accountable. Does that mean the GOP feels vulnerable without Trump's support and leadership?
It could either mean that, or it could mean actually the opposite, that they are going to need to find a new leader. Remember, a leader needs followers. So right now, you probably have a lot of behind-the-scenes conversation regarding who can step up quickly, if not the president. And this is, again, another demonstration of how this trial wasn't just for the senators. Everybody knew they weren't going to convict now Citizen Trump. This was a trial for the larger jury, which is the American people. And even though they knew that they weren't going to have a conviction, we all had to watch and feel and have that visceral reaction to the events of January 6th all over again. The optics and the politics of that procedure may in fact have damaged the now ex-president. But his kids might have political aspirations. People that support him, or at least did in the past, they may have aspirations. And who knows, we've called him Teflon Don for this long. Who knows what will happen in the future? We're all waiting, and that remains the wild card in this analysis.
All right, so we've only got about 30 seconds left. So final question. If we compare Trump to Nixon, after Nixon was impeached, the Republicans came back to win the next election cycle, and they did this by distancing themselves from Richard Nixon. Is that the case here moving forward to 2022 and beyond?
In a sense, and this is where I circle back to the no love lost, because there's a divide. There are some who will certainly distance themselves. But remember, President Nixon came back after his impeachment and redeemed a little bit of his qualifications as a foreign policy advisor and some of the other things he brought to the table. You wonder whether President Trump can do that, given that he was an outsider. In fact, ironically, that was part of why he won.
Dr. Wendy Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.